A lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about today is about VO at scale. A lot of this comes from me being given a task at work to figure out how fast we can get editors to edit. The answer is fast, and that's a lot where a lot of this comes from. All of this is portable to everything, but if you're like, why would you do that? It's to get editors to be able to edit 40 lines per hour. So that's where it's coming from, and we'll go ahead and get started. So why are we here? We're here to talk about video game voiceover editing and mastering. We're not going to talk about implementation. We're going to sort of end with exporting audio files, and that will kind of be it. But we'll talk about everything before then. We're not going to talk about what narrative does. There are a lot of collaborators that come into VO, which makes it a very difficult field to be working at this scale, because we've got so many stakeholders. We've got so many people who just like have an opinion and have a stake in this that we need to make their lives easy. Because that's always my goal as a sound designer, especially as a technical sound designer. I'm William Lowe. I am a technical sound designer for Clean Cuts Interactive, which is a DC and Maryland-based audio vendor, which means that we do not make games ourselves. We contract out to game studios. This VO journey of mine started on Asgard's Wrath 2 for Sanzaru Studios, which was a Meta-owned studio until this January, when VR doesn't exist anymore, just AI exists. And then I did it for Drew here for Lego 2K Drive at Visual Concepts 2K. And then it's been a journey from there, including most recently Outer Worlds 2, which is where this talk comes from. This comes from a talk I made for Game SoundCon this past fall about the VO pipeline we did for Outer Worlds 2. I think the reason that VO editing and mastering is important for a lot of people to understand, because a lot of sound designers don't touch it, especially at a larger studio. So many people that I know have gone their entire careers without touching VO. But if you are early in your career or in a different shade of audio, then knowing how to do this opens up a lot of doors to just get your foot in. That's how I got my start doing game audio, was in editing dialogue as a freelancer for Aw2. And that's when I started to learn these workflows and develop these ideas of how we can make it faster. And that's how we got here. And that's what we'll talk about. I also teach. I teach a course in Introduction to Game Audio at Yale University's David Geffen School of Drama, which means that I am here for you all. So if at any point I say anything that doesn't make sense, or you have a question, don't wait until the end. Just interrupt me. I'll go on a digression and we'll find our way back. I have slides which will hopefully keep me on track, but we'll see. But if at any point you have a question, just raise your hand, just interrupt me. We'll chat about it. So what will we actually cover? We're going to cover a wide range of stuff, hopefully. We'll see. But we're going to lightly cover the pre-recording and recording process. I really want this to be as much about the editing and mastering as possible, but I don't think it's able to do that without talking about the recording process, because I think it is unique in what it is. And then we will get into the script, which is very important. Editing, mastering. We will not get to localization. We will actually hopefully get to VO effects, which are efforts or just noises people make. So we won't have time to get to localization. We won't have time to get to implementation, though all of those are very interesting topics. Localization, for folks who don't yet know, is getting the voiceover into different languages. We might hit on that briefly when we get to VO effects, but what's so special about games? VO specifically about games. And you'll see through this that dialogue in games is unique because of the branching and nonlinear aspect of games. So the way that we need to be able to piece pieces together the scale of games. We can't have all actors in one room at the same time to record. Usually these recording sessions last months, if not years, to get all of this dialogue together. Stuff gets rewritten, stuff gets replaced, things get added last minute, things get taken away last minute. You never know what the final product is going to be when you're in the recording session. You hope you know, but you never actually know. So as editors and I'm going to use the term editors, not engineers, for a very important purpose, because in games, engineer means programmer. At Clean Cuts, we are all mixers / engineers, thinking about studio engineers. So if I say engineer, that's what I mean. I mean editor. We say editing and mastering mainly because that's what people still call this process. It's all the same thing. Rarely do I even consider splitting them up. But people always say, can you do editing and mastering? And sometimes I do them in separate passes, but always want the same person doing it. Let's talk about recording. The recording process is interesting because, like we said before, there are a lot of people present, and we'll talk about who those people are briefly. We'll talk about what happens in the session, and we'll talk about what's special about it. So this is an idea of who is there. We've got the director, who, it depends on the game. Sometimes it is a team member being the director. Sometimes it is an external person who is a professional director. Sometimes it's just someone else who's there to direct. This person's job is to talk to the talent, talk them through what the line is looking for. We might be jumping to widely different parts of the script. There might not be, there are probably visuals for the game at this point, but probably nothing that's really locked if they're doing the process early enough. So there's a lot to sort of hold the talent's hands through because there's no way to do it otherwise. So we need someone focused on the talent, making sure they're giving the performance that they need to be giving for the game. A lot of this is just about splitting the work up because there's a lot going on at the same time. We then have the narrative director or someone from the narrative team present. They're the expert on the game. They're mainly there for the director. So that if the director is like, wait, what's going on here? Or, oh, that's a good question that the talent just had. I'm not sure. What do you think, narrative? Narrative isn't really an expert in getting a performance out of an actor. They're not there to help the actor do certain things. They aren't telling them to speak from the small of their back. They don't know those things. They're just there because they have the entire world of this game in their heads and on their computer, and they can answer any question. Or if ideas are flowing during the session, be able to say, that's a good idea, let's explore that, or we're never going to use that, that's nowhere on base, forget it. We then might have the audio lead or dialogue lead present. This totally depends on the game. It depends on the game, it depends on budget, it depends on what's going on. If you're lucky, they're there in the session when they want to be, is usually that they're open and available. And by they want to be, I mean the audio lead wants to be there, or the dialogue lead wants to be there, because they're doing vocal effects, they're doing a specific cut sequence that needs specific things. The audio team needs something, or creature session. If a creature session is happening, the audio lead definitely wants to be there to make sure they're getting the right content that narrative might just not know about. And then there's the recordist, the person running the DAW, checking for pops, clicks, making sure the session is running what I would call correctly, which we'll talk about in just a second, and getting the editors what they need to be successful. The way I view this entire process, the way I view most of games, is that this is all about enabling the people around you to be successful. doing your job so everyone else can do their job. That's collaboration, right? That's all we're really trying to do, is splitting up the work so that everyone can do their job, their expertise, and that everyone else can do their job and their expertise. And then you've got the horde of talent that exists. Could be 3 people doing a bunch of characters, could be a 40-person cast, depends on the game, depends on the scale, depends on a whole lot of things. I'm going to walk through the 4 points in the bottom corner over there. The way that most sessions that I have seen function is you'll get to a line, the director will talk about the line briefly, hopefully in less than 10 seconds, to set the actor up with everything they need to do. The actor will look at the line and read the line 3 times. Lines in games are usually pretty short. If we're more than a sentence or 2, we're probably breaking it up into multiple lines, or it's a separate thing that we're doing. We're just doing this monologue for 30 minutes. Asgard's Wrath 2 had an average line length of 7 words. Outer Worlds 2 was about double that. So Outer Worlds 2 was much longer lines, more instructional, fewer chirps, fewer barks, more involved story going on. Well, more condensed. How many lines were in Asgard's Wrath 2 and Outer Worlds? Asgard's Wrath 2 was 12,000 lines in a 100-hour game. Outer Worlds 2 was 40 to 50,000 lines at double the length. That was what scared us, is when we got this ask to do 40,000 lines of double the length of line in a year. That's when we knew we had to figure something out. So, actor says there are 3 takes, and then one of 2 things happens. The director either says a select, or they give a note to do it again. That note, that could be, just give me one more, do it like this. It could be, let's do another set, do it like this. Or it is, A is my select, B is my select, C is my select. Yeah.
This is 3 different styles of takes, right?
Sometimes it can be the same thing and just saying it the same way 3 times. It doesn't need to be like totally different. Most of the time it's not. The director's usually given a narrow enough path that the actor knows, but we'll hear in a second some takes from an actor where she makes slight variations to use. It's like sound designing different variations of a sound, right? You're not doing 3 totally different approaches to a gunshot. It's the same gunshot, but it's 3 variations on the same thing. Yeah.
What exactly do you mean by ABC and XY?
Yes, I'm about to get there. So usually the director will say ABC. If the actor has said more than 3 because they've agreed on that, or the director's not paying attention, they might just remember that it was the second to last one. It was Y. Oh, it was the last one. It was Z. I don't remember how many they did. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. It's Z. So those are the 3 main things that I'll see when I'm looking at selects, is ABC or XYZ. The person that I missed here, who's hopefully there, is the keeper of the script. Typically, when sessions have worked best, the person that this is the either dialogue or narrative or sound producer or project manager keeping the script, who is listening to the director and the narrative for any line changes, for selects, just making sure that the master document that exists of all of the information is kept up to date as the session goes, so that no information is lost, things don't have to be reconciled later. We're just a little more squared away as things are going. This is where things differ of how sessions are run. In my experience, everything is recorded in Pro Tools. I'm going to speak Pro Tools for this. The older style of running this is in between takes, the engineer just drops a marker in between each take. Some people like to name that marker with the select as they go. I think that's way too much work, but people think it's less work. What I want people to do is, there's a mode in Pro Tools where when you stop recording, the playhead goes to the end of the clip. Just do that. Just stop recording after the take and start again. That makes sure that the numbers are always correct. Each take is a different file, and the file numbers are always consistent. So we always know what is physically where. We don't need to worry about time code. We don't need to transmit markers. We don't need to worry about any of this. It's just this file with this tail number, the second one of them. That's it. When I run record sessions, that's how I run it. It's really easy. It's really straightforward. I find it to be faster than dropping markers because you can't fat finger anything as easily. And if numbers go off, the engineer just pipes up to the script taker and say, hey, we're actually on 12, not 11. And they're like, okay, cool. Because the director doesn't care what the number is. No one cares what the number is except for the engineer and the script taker. That's their own little secret. Everyone else can just shout letters and move on with their lives. The other thing that you might hear are alts. That's either narrative or the director or somebody saying, hey, that's not the best, but we might want it as an option later. Going back to your question, Jack, like it could be that they did a totally different approach for one take, that they're like, ooh, that could be interesting, but we don't want to commit to it. Let's make sure that it's kept along for the chain and we remember that we liked that. It depends on the game whether they want that actually like edited and mastered with everything else and delivered, or just marked somewhere. But that's what selects are. That's what alts are. And that is, to me, how we set up recording to set up editing and mastering for success. I'm going to hit on microphones just for a second because I'm sure people have questions about microphones. For me, the wider the microphone, the better. I'm not talking Omni. Well, Omni could be fine. But the most important thing when it comes to performance, not even performance, but to delivery and to keeping the actor in check, for lack of a better term, is ensuring the delivery is consistent. Consistent levels, really just consistent access. I don't want to like have some lines over here where they're just flying through. I've gotten stuff like that. Game audio performance, I was talking with some folks just a couple of minutes ago, is really unique. In theater, you're taught to act with your body and your voice. You need to speak loudly, you need to project to the back of the house, and you need to be larger than life so that because no one's closer than 20 feet away from you, you really need to act. In film, they want you to not act with your voice because they want you to be able to cut any takes together. They want flexibility in post. That's the most important thing in film. In games, we don't see you. We probably have some half-baked lip sync with some mocap that animators have done everything they can with and is still just communicating emotion. It's that voice that carries the emotion, that brings the story to the player while they're listening to Spotify in the background. You had a question.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask how many times, if ever, do you see multiple actors go through a scene, or is it always line by line?
It's always line by line. Usually we just have actors one at a time. Rarely are people flexible enough to get multiple in a booth at once. I actually got that delivered recently. Multiple actors in the same booth together. The chemistry's great. But keeping that session organized and dissecting that session as editors is really difficult. Very, very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you just said that it's usually always line by line, but is there ever an exception if you're doing something like a cutscene versus like dialogue?
So that's really interesting, actually. With a cutscene, you're more likely to see an ADR approach, really just treat it like film and do ADR with the animation, with the cutscene animation, and time lock everything in the booth. And then absolutely, you would just do takes like that. Treat it like animation, treat it like ADR, really go in a different field that I separate from games. Yeah, great question. Anything else? Sweet. We'll talk about this here just while we're talking about recording and performance. When it comes to VO effects, there's an important decision to make that I think is a purely budgetary one. I don't think it really matters for the game, but it's whether you want to localize VO effects or not. The main reason that that's an important conscious decision that needs to be made is if you're not localizing VO effects, you need to ensure there are no words in your VO effects. So if you're working on a pirate game where people are going "our matey" over and over again in their vocalizations, they can't do that because people in Japan will not know what "our matey" means, maybe. I don't know. Or like "let's run" or "attack," right? When you're doing like a charge sort of VO effects. You might end up with language barriers there that you'll want to need to localize, but if you're not localizing VO effects, will be English everywhere, which might be jarring. So something to just consider and think about as you go through and planning your sessions. The script, this is my favorite part. The script is data. The script is a truth. The script is a fact. We need to ensure that it's a truth. We need to ensure it's a fact. Whenever I'm talking to a client, I say, can I trust the script? And we always have an understanding of this is a real yes or no question. Do you trust your script? Can I trust your script? And there's a lot of information in these that makes that really important. So I couldn't fit it all on one line. These are the same three. So it's like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H are the column letters if we're talking Excel. This is not all of the information that's on scripts. This is the information I care about on scripts. The most important thing first is character. Who's saying the line? Useful information. Then, what is the line? That's useful information. We'll talk about why that's so important to me as an editor in a bit. But second piece of vital information. The third is the file name. What do we need it to be when we're done? Because it's not named that now. It's named Cam Record August 17th, 2025, 414 or whatever, 017 or whatever. And then the select. This is what that nomenclature from a few slides ago where we talked about selects and alts and letters and numbers. That's what it compiles down to. Status, if you're internal to the game, is also really useful, just keeping track of what's where. But all of this information is important to me because this is the information I want in the edit session. When an engineer starts editing, they should never have to look at a script. They should never have to reference anything. They should just look at the screen in front of them and never leave. That allows us to go at 40 lines an hour, which is slightly over a line per minute, which is blisteringly fast. I will say when we budget this, we budget 5 hours out of an 8-hour day for 40 lines an hour because you're going to lose your mind if you're doing this 8 hours a day or 7 hours a day, just chugging. Not going to happen. But that's why the VO line is important to me. Because I want to make sure that every single word that should be in there is in there, and any florality the actor did that they don't want in there isn't in there. If we didn't have this in Reaper, then there's no way to know what there is. So this is very important. This is what I parse. We're going to look at the Reaper session in a bit, but what I structured together is a way to take these Excel documents, give Reaper the Excel document, give Reaper the bucket of audio files, and it builds a session that editors can then take, edit, never leave, churn out audio files. We set up the region render matrix. It prints everything out with the right file names. Boom, bop, bam, you're done. That's the goal. Mastering. This is tricky and might be a little more controversial than some of the other stuff. It's really just a taste. But this is what unlocked for us getting to better sounding games faster. Who here has played? No. Okay, couple. Great. Did you notice that how long ago did you play it? Recently? A while ago? The intro the first prologue act. They did not master how I would, because the brief lines they had a couple lines where we went, oh, just like exclamations, were incredibly loud. And that's because either they batch processed the audio or they kept it to a fixed loudness standard. We'll talk about what that means here. So LUFS is loudness units full scale. These are averages of usually K-weighted loudness. It's not just flat frequencies. It's accentuated or dipped in certain areas to try to simulate human hearing. It does a bad job of it. But it averages out effectively a weighted RMS, which is root mean square, which is a way of averaging out peak values. It's an average of an average of an average. Momentary requires 400 milliseconds to get you an accurate reading. Short term, which is S, requires 3 seconds to give you an average reading. And integrated is averages of short terms. All of that to be said, I pretty much always use integrated. It doesn't always give me the best reading or necessarily an accurate reading, but it gives me a number I can work off of. And we'll talk about why that is in a second. Whenever I do set up standards these days, though, I do set up both an integrated and a momentary max standard. Momentary max because that's what most momentary readings give you in a stable number. It's refreshing every 400 milliseconds. I can't read that fast. So it gives you the momentary max. And so if stuff is close, it usually tells me I'm in the right ballpark. The way that you determine your loudness standard, to me, depends on a couple things. Usually platform, as in, am I shipping for Quest? Am I shipping for PC? Am I shipping for mobile? Am I shipping for console? That will inform some of it. Like when we were working on Quest, we needed VO blasting because those little speakers on those headsets are not the best thing in the world. You're playing a game on a potato, it sounds like a potato. But also, do you have the performance to do processing at runtime? Do you want to leave yourself some headroom? I find this to be the newest question we're asking ourselves in VO. Before we were like, okay, our game is sitting around here. We want our VO to sit around the same place. Boom, standard, let's go. But now we have room. Now we have DDR5 GPUs out the ass. Like we performance is open now. So we can add compressors, we can add limiters, we can add processing at runtime if we want to. So like if we're in a fighting game and everyone's in helmets, but we don't quite know what the helmets sound like yet, and maybe we want them to be the player to switch out the helmets. And so we want to be able to change the processing of the helmets of the VO at runtime to be dynamic with the player's appearance. We can then master a bit lower so there's more headroom at runtime in the game. These are new thoughts and ideas that we're starting to play with to see, what does that do? What does that mean? How does all of that middleware stuff work is not stuff we're covering today, but questions we're thinking of at this point in the process. The other big, this is a year or two old, but question that we're asking is single band versus multiple bands. So when I'm speaking to you all, I'm either using spoken word. This is more spoken word here. When I'm talking to you all, I'm talking a little bit louder. I'm talking in maybe a projected tone. I'm not yelling, I'm not shouting, I'm projecting, but I'm also not speaking. And I'm also not whispering. All of those sit at different loudnesses. What matters at the end of the day, and this is the crux of my argument, not that I'm arguing with anybody, is loudness doesn't matter. What matters is how the lines are perceived. What banded standards give you is the freedom to have editors think less, but get lines feeling more correct faster. So, if I have a range of -17 LUFS plus or -4, for example, whispered is probably going to be lower in that range. But depending on performance, -21 LUFS might not be quiet enough. Why does that matter? What does that mean? We're going to look at all that in the Reaper session in just a second. But if you boost stuff too high, boost stuff too much, or boost it not enough. You end up with shouted lines feeling quiet, whispered lines feeling loud, spoken lines just sort of wiggling somewhere in the middle, and it doesn't feel right. So you do it to your client's spec, you get everything perfect, it looks great on paper, you send it, and they kick back half the files. They're saying, this is sounding too quiet, this is sounding too loud. Well, I edited it to spec. It's right by the contract. But that's not what we care about. People ask me concerning AI whether I'm concerned about like that. And I think about something like this. Computers can't perceive audio like we can. It can't, when I try to batch process something in RX, it doesn't sound good. It sounds single banded. It doesn't feel like, first off, computers can't tell is something whispered, is something yelled, is something spoken. It can guess, it can probably tell spoken from yelled, but it can't tell whispered. Not really. I can't get something to shoot me out that for me. I've tried. Humans need to listen to this. There's an art to this. It's not just machine repetition of go, 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 go. There is a art and a flow state you need to enter to get this right. Yeah.
I just have a quick question before we move on. So knowing that it's all perception and your client is probably going to complain if you do just batch the files and send them off and say it's to spec. Do you have a conversation beforehand where you say, look, we're going to do this so it sounds right, every file might not be to spec? Or do you just say, you know what, they're just going to appreciate this?
As a vendor, people are usually coming to us because they can't batch it they don't want to batch it. Small teams can batch it themselves. Why are you paying all this money if you can just do it yourself? So that's the main reason is there is a point of assumption of you're coming to us because we're going to raise the standard of your dialogue and make it a better sounding game because you came to us. So I don't even consider batch processing stuff at this point. I would assume that that'll be more conversation for teams internally of, do we want to just batch this or do we want to actually edit this and master this?
Okay, so you find that your clients have a sophistication enough where they know what LUFS is and okay.
Yeah, we get a standard from our clients. This isn't, sometimes we recommend standards to people, but usually it's from the client. They know exactly what they want and they prescribe a lot of this to us, but they don't care how it happens. They just want it to happen and it happened for as little money as possible for them.
I literally told William, I have no idea what I'm doing. Can you please help me?
And we took the Wrath 2 spec and stuck it on a mobile game or whatever your game was. Console, Switch, a little bit of everything.
They've already shut down the server.
All right, my next slide is just the spreadsheet slide before we talked about all this already, so we're just going to jump into Reaper. All right. So, welcome to Reaper. This is a completely Lua-based script existing inside of Reaper that I built myself before AI was a thing. That allows my engineers to never leave. They can do everything with buttons. There are also hotkeys for most of these things. And there are a couple special things in here that makes it all super flexible. What I was finding before Outer Worlds 2 was I was needing to rebuild scripts for every project because it was so bespoke. The goal behind this project was to make things as modular and as flexible as possible. So as new projects came in, we didn't have to rebuild every time, and we could just make things better. So I've got a huge settings list that allows me to do a whole bunch of different things, change the way that things are set up, change cutoff times, a whole bunch of loudness category stuff. If we have 5 different loudness categories, stuff gets ugly, but it can happen. Whole color customize, because it might as well be pretty if you're staring at it for weeks on end. But there are 2 categories here, LUFS and match. LUFS is Reaper has a built-in way to normalize files to a spec, kind of. So I've used that where in my settings, I can say what is my integrated loudness targets and my momentary loudness targets. And based off of the length of the file you give it or the clip that you give it, it either looks at momentary standard or looks at loudness standard or integrated standard, and will adjust the item gain of your selected item so that the audio is that loud. It's not perfect. It looks at the source file, so it doesn't take your chain into account. So I added this offset over here that you can just constantly be adjusting because I'm constantly adjusting it to try to compensate for the gain added or lost from your chain as you go through. So if I just know that my chain is basically adding 3 dB of gain, I can drop my spoken offset by 3 dB. It gets me a lot closer, a lot quicker. This does not take out leveling work. This just gets you more in the ballpark. There are a lot of times where I'm always adding 6.5 dB. This fixes that. You still have to tell it, is it spoken, is it whispered, is it yelled, but it gets you there. The other thing here are these match buttons. The goal here is the editor never needs to leave. I want them to be able to hear match files without leaving. So every time that you click on one of these buttons, it looks at a folder of audio files provided to the engineer, the editor, and will play a file of that loudness. So I'm working on a whispered line. I need to get other whispered lines in my head. I can click match whispered, and I'll hear other whispered lines that we have deemed gold standard that give the engineer into the headspace of the whispered line. Because the number doesn't matter. The number, it matters. It's not the end-all be-all. The end-all be-all are these match buttons. Does it sound in the same world as that? That's what matters. How do I know what that means in the world? For me, it's become kind of a gut feeling that sits in the lower mid-range of the voice that I'm listening to. Oh, let's talk about what you're looking at here. So remember the elements of the spreadsheet. They're all right here. This little quote icon here on each item is the line that comes from the line text of the spreadsheet. The region name here is the export file name. And the marker here is the select. All this information is here. From it, it's pretty easy to see how it's split up. Like here's A, here's B, here's C. I need B. Okay, boom, boom. That's B. I have not played the file. I know I have the right select. A good start. We're going to jump down a little bit. The other thing that I've done here is, this is it, is custom hotkeys. A lot of our editors at Clean Cuts, 95% of the time are in Pro Tools. So all of the basic editing buttons are Pro Tools buttons. A, S, D, and G, if you're familiar with Pro Tools, are your normal trim top, trim tail, fade in, fade out. B splits. Hitting minus will add the clip gain line. Really simple stuff like that. Control Alt clicking will will create a copy of the file, send it to RX, and open up RX for you. So you can just go to editing in there. Pretty quick and easy. The chain that I use is always has become the same five plugins, only with the addition of Clear. Has anyone used Clear before? No? This is great. If I remember correctly, rendering weird. Yeah.
The spreadsheet's getting imported because that's a Reaper thing?
Yes. So actually there is a non-Lua script. I have a Python script that converts the Excel file to a Lua table file. It's just one Lua file that is just the spreadsheet in a table. I then parse that table for the contents. So it's just nested tables, just like you would do a nested array. And I just know what column's what based off of the first row, and it just defines everything. Yeah.
Does that automatically, or you have to go through and...
I tell it once what column is what, and then I just feed it spreadsheet, feed it audio files, and it boom, 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 boom. Yeah.
I was trying to get a sense of where this is in the process now. This is like all the dialogue's been recorded.
At least this session. A session has been recorded. It's been sent to us, the editors. So this is what the editing lead, me, for example, would have provided you, an editor. The recordist probably recorded in Pro Tools, and I just basically pointed the session maker at the audio files folder of the Pro Tools session.
And so that's what that first spreadsheet was for, is you put in all that data and then it makes this out of that?
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't even make that. I get that from the client. So the client gives me an XLSX and a Pro Tools session with the audio files. I just use the audio files. I never open Pro Tools. And we rock and roll. Nice. Any other questions before we listen? Yeah.
Actually, a quick question. When you're talking about like hearing to match these with your ear, what are you using as your audio output? Are you in headphones? Or are you using...
Headphones, for sure. Yeah. And I can specify what track the matched files go through. So just for fun, I have it traveling through the monitor track. So I can still, so the monitor track just has, it's showing up somewhere else. Up there, it's showing up there. Just as insight. This is tricky to get. This is my prized possession, which is a Reaper effect chain with a mono instance of insight. Reaper does not know what mono is. Mono does not exist in Reaper. Reaper knows dual mono. If you do that, everything will be like 6 dB too hot or too quiet. I can't remember right now because I haven't had to think about it in a while. So what you need to do is use the VST3 version of Insight, set the in-out to be VST3 bus size of 1, and pray it sets correctly. I guarantee if I tried to do this live without my chain, it would not work the first time. I don't know how I got this, but I got it, and I don't let it go. If anyone would like this, I'm on the Discord. I will share my template with you. Or the mono insight. I've worked around this in different ways. Just send one channel to Insight and then channel map it. Do this in different places. I've gone through many iterations. This is great because I just plop this on and I'm good to go. I've actually managed to package this with the RIA pack, and it's still a little buggy. The idea is that it will install it in the user's correct effects templates folder, so it just pops up for people when you sync the RIA pack for this, which is pretty slick. Yeah.
So with the match, because I think this is a really cool concept, who's deciding what the match files are?
The dialogue, it depends. It's a negotiation of who wants to do that. As a vendor, I always offer that we can do it ourselves, but it would definitely be better and more useful to us if someone on the project's team can do that for us, so that we're providing the sound that they want. So we can do it. We always have a project coordinator who preps these sessions and makes sure that there's some same ear on everything. But ideally, we're getting files from the client, and and we use those as the match files for our engineers. However, we're distributing sessions to engineers, whether it's Google Drive, Dropbox, whatever. We have a folder in there with it for the match files. So all they need to do at the beginning is just refresh match, and anything new we've added will be added to their session and will be referenced in play. There's also functionality in here to be able to Oh, it's not popping up right now because I don't have the folder attached. But if I had this set up, then you could say, I just want one character. You can make folder structures per character as well. So if you have a main character of the game and you want them just to hear that character sounds, you can build a folder structure to support that. It's not procedural. It won't go in and find just that. I haven't done that yet. But you set up something for your primary character, Jeff, with a whispered, spoken, and shouted, and then the editor will just hear that. All of this is default Reaper stuff. There's not custom functionality in this beyond the base Reaper API. So all of this you all can do. The funkiest thing that I have in here that took us the longest to figure out, and I give a shout out to senior technical sound designer Rock Lee, who Zach knows. Rock and I spent a while figuring this out together, which is this top and tail button. This looks at the individual. It's probably not going to work on this, but let's see. Nope. Oh, because this is a configuration I threw together for this. But what it does when it works is it looks at the loudness of the file from the beginning and from the end of the item, and looks for a threshold point and then trims to that threshold point. So it's kind of like a strip silence, but just for the one file. It will then look at the region that's over it and make that region the same size. And then the editor just needs to do small adjustments of heads and tails, but it is as tight as it can be without you needing to do this all zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out nonsense. Yeah. Okay, let's listen to my friend Allison Fairby for a second.
Think you can cover for me?
So this is her on the phone call trying to ask a friend to cover for her. We can hear a couple different takes.
Think you can cover for me? Think you can cover for me?
So, Jack, to your question earlier, all the same world, but definitely different approaches. Yeah, absolutely. But I've chosen this because it's a bit quieter than the other lines. I don't know if there's this might be better.
Think you can cover for me?
Oh, same line. Great. So we're going to take this, not the select, but a good example, because right now it's the quietest that I've got. So if I jack this up, not that button, that one. So I want you to pay attention as I go up here to the low mids.
Think you can cover for me? Think you can cover for me? Think you can cover for me?
It's the first thing that jumps out, at least to me. Did other people feel that? That's what happens when you boost up a whispered line too much, or you don't boost up a shouted line enough. It'll sound thin. It won't have that low end. Part of that is the effects chain. Part of that is compression. Part of that is limiting. Part of that is just amplitude of the voice. And so that's what I tell my engineers to listen to when I'm saying perception. When I'm matching something like this.
Hey, oh my gosh, so sorry.
To this.
Think you can cover for me?
Too loud.
Think you can cover for me?
Too loud.
Think you can cover for me? Hey, oh my gosh, so sorry.
Couple things happening here, which are very common. The first of which is actors love to trail in and out of lines. So one of the first things that I'm going to do here is go in with my clip gain and just give her a little bit of help at the top.
Hey, oh my gosh.
This is a little extreme. I wouldn't want to use this. I'd look for a different take for the beginning here, but that's what we got. We'll add a little that. That'll help a little bit.
Hey, oh my gosh, so sorry. I am...
And we'll compare it with this over here.
Think you can cover for me? Think you can cover for me? Think you can cover for me?
Liking where that is.
Hey, oh my gosh, so sorry.
I'm just listening to those low mids and just seeing when those start to come into play together. That's when these match files are really important. We make sure that the gold standard of match file is where we want it to be loudness wise, and then everything is perceptively relative to that. That's the goal. That's what we're sort of looking for, listening for, stressing with the performers or with the editors, is how to get the performance to feel like that. I'm of course going through as well, and I'm listening for just like general dips or movements away from the microphone, breaths.
Sorry, I am...
So I think it was your question about the colored waveforms earlier. I can tell this is a breath, this is a breath, this is a breath from the shape and from the grayness of the color, because breaths are more wide band, so they're going to have more gray. So I bet that's...
Wow.
That's a breath.
Wow. So out of sorts.
That's a breath, and that's a s because it's gray. So that's sort of the stuff that I look for. We were talking earlier about the weird colored waveforms I have here. I don't remember what color means what. It's more, is it a color or is it gray is really what I notice. And that's what I bounce off of. I have a script. I don't know if it's here. I'm not going to try. That will just, I make a time selection and it adds volume automation points to drop the breaths by a certain amount, so that I don't have to manually go boop, 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 and try to get that, which I'm not going to unless I zoom in, bring that down. Now I'm bringing the breath down. Some people want the breaths gone, which I'd probably just do a little trim. But I think down sounds more natural than gone. So that's another script that I had, just to, again, make the take the low hanging fruit off the engineers. Their question. Yeah.
The colored, is that your script?
Base Reaper. Yeah, that's just in the preferences somewhere that I don't remember. Yeah. Yeah.
So, just going back to the match,
Yeah.
will that, I don't know what it actually does. Did it actually call up a file and put it in the session?
No, it doesn't put it in the session. It just plays the file through the track. So it just looks at, so what happens is when you hit refresh match, it does the actual indexing of the folder that you give it, does all the searching, grabs the file names, and then holds those file names and paths. And then when you hit this button, it chooses a random just string from the table and then says, hey, play this audio file here, and just play it through this top track. So it doesn't bring anything into the S session. It doesn't bloat the size. You just hear it. That's it.
Another question. Earlier you clicked on something and it was one of the selects. And is that a function of your script where, like, are the selects known to Reaper by...
No, that's just my eyes. I can just, she kept really good breaks. Also, for people who are interested in clear, you can see this noise floor. I mean, we can bypass and take a look. So we're at like minus 54 noise floor, which is pretty loud. If we turn this back on, it's gone, which is all clear doing that. Beyond that, the chain is really simple. It's a really simple Pro Q3, but it's just a high pass, a low band, a mid band, a DS band, and then a high band. For the Quest especially, you want that shit crispy. So I usually just bring this up and then DS where it needs to be. I don't even know if this is right.
Out of sorts this morning.
Yeah, that's in the right place.
Running behind.
Maybe up a little bit. I love messing with this parameter in ProQ, making the default bell a different dB per octave, especially for de-essing. Setting that to 24 for stuff like that is really nice. A compressor, doing compressor things. I've been lowering this a lot. This is tough, but relatively high threshold, I might be lowering this down to like 3 or something. Just depends on the standard. I mean, I'm working on stuff right now where I've got that at 2 because it's just quiet, the standard. Pro MB, this is just high-end control. Can save you on or off access fixes really well. To some clients, the number does really matter. The way that we deal with that, it slows us down, but the way that we deal with it is we create a high band and we create a low band. And all the engineers do is automate the gain of the high band and the gain of the low band. That's it. That allows us to offset that low end boost you get from whispered stuff or that you're missing from shouted stuff when you force things into a loudness range. Messing with just these 2 bands seems to be enough to get most actors to feel perceptively correct while being technically correct. Most of the time, I like to just throw the standards out the window, use them to start, throw them out. But if the standard is important to the client, that's the more important thing. And we'll do something like this so that it's not all this EQ stuff going on and then you're getting into phase stuff and then yada, yada, yada. Really simple, straightforward, 2 automation lines, and that's it. Yeah.
So which is which in this case? Like in which case do you boost the highs?
You would bring the highs down if it's a whispered line, or the lows down if it's a whispered line, up if it's a shouted line, because that's what the gain that you need to do to get it in standard does, the opposite. High end is just to sort of match that or to help. I don't want to go crazy with this. So it's the old perception trick of instead of adding lows, I'll cut highs. That helps a ton. So I might bring, if bring this up by more than like 6 feels like a lot, then I'll start lowering the high end to sort of counteract. Yeah.
On an actor-to-actor basis, at least for the EQ, when you're first hopping in there and seeing like what the actor's voice is like, how crazy are you going on trying to tweak the parameters on ProQ to fit the voice?
So the high pass pretty much stays still, might shift a little bit, mainly between more male voices or more female voices. High end changes a bunch. This shifts just to what specific frequency their sibilance is. This changes the most. These 2 here, this is really the tone. Like I'd probably change Allison's a bit. Actually, I don't love how it sounds right now. I'll usually start with these just like not being dynamic. I have it on natural phase, and I'll just like start figuring out where the holes are. I really just want to move these 2 and this third to really get me the tone I want. I don't really want to be doing more than that. If I do, then there was a problem on the recording side. Yeah.
Do you always doing audio video editing in just one track?
Yes. Yeah. If I'm needing to do more EQing than that, something happened wrong in the record. This was Drew asked me a question yesterday over chat, which I teased him for, but is a good point, which is, what do you do with like really bad recordings or really dynamic recordings? Fix it at the recording stage. It's not like that's just going to slow us down so much that you're not going to want to see that cost. It's better if we just like, I don't want to automate this over the session. If I'm doing perception, you're not doing any automation. If it doesn't feel right, change the gain. If that doesn't work, ship it as best as you can and they can redo the line. That's what our clients like from us. That seems to be the best result. Because us mangling something is just going to result in artifacts or weirdness. Fixing at the recording stage is going to result in the best sounding game possible. Yeah.
When you're recording multiple talent, does the production flow feel easier if you created separate sessions for each VO artist rather than having it all done in one master template?
So from an editing perspective, yes. From a record perspective, as long as you do one character at a time, that's why that character column in the spreadsheet becomes important, because we can make it where it filters by character, so that you only have one per edit session. The reason why we do one per edit session is not like, it's good to stay in one mindset at a time, going back to how can the editor think as little as possible. Give them one voice at a time, but also then I can parallel as many sessions as possible. I can have 2 people working on separate sessions at the same time if I split those out, versus having them all in one session. I'm on a critical path failure, or bottleneck rather. This is the crux. This is 90% of it. Let's talk about efforts. I don't have any efforts recorded. Efforts, VO effects, whatever you want to call them. I had a slide about it. It's not important. The important thing is this. Efforts are short. Huh, ha, he, ha. That's not 400 milliseconds. You're not getting any sort of useful reading out of that. So what I recommend people do, because it's proven to be the best, is meter all of them together. Take your set of 5, 10 efforts, however many it is, and look at the integrated level of all of them. Because that's going to get you the average of an average of an average, get you an idea of the ballpark where you're at. But as we've seen, I don't care about the number at the end of the day. I care about how it sounds and feels. When we get deep in, depending on the scale of the game, if we get deep into VO effects, then I will start match files of other VO effects. But to start off with, you're just comparing to VO lines, just to keep it in the world. I want to go back to something with VO for a second, because I kind of glanced over it. The big reason why I've got this tops and tails script is because I want this cut there. I want it tiny, like maybe a little bit more. I want it tight. I don't know if anyone here has ever set up dialogue in a game before, but you want as much control as possible as you can from one line to the next. If you want that to be a quick connection, you want it to be a quick connection. If you want it to be long, you want it to be long. The worst thing in the world is when you've got digital black at the head or tail of your file and you can't make the next line start as quick as you want. I want to add a delay. I don't want to make things overlap in game. So we want that to be as tight as possible without cutting off the sound. Different people have different approaches to that, of what the top and the tail is. For some people, it's the top, the beginning and the end of these words. For some people, it's the breath afterwards or the breath before. Get more of a performance, have it sounding more natural. Just depends on the game and what you really want that to be looking like. VO effects are similar. We want them to be tight because we want the timings to be right, because we're doing all of this to animations. The other tricky thing to VO effects is that they're going in random containers. You never know which one's going to pop up on the same animation. So we have to make sure more of the VO effects are the same, but they still have to feel variation. So once everything sounds vaguely the same volume, not the same volume, I don't want them to visually look like a bunch of the same size triangles. If I do, I'm losing variance. So they look a little bit different, but sound like in that lower register, they're from the same place, they're from the same character, but they have different actual volumes. We then want to make sure that the attack time is consistent through them. So if I'm doing a huh, I don't want to have that be in the same random container as a huh, because that then in the animation is going to totally screw everything up. So there is a feature in Reaver called warp points. It's like Ableton's. So I'll take one. I'll take this for example. This is where I do use multiple tracks. This is my gold standard of this VO effect, of my attack. All the others now need to follow this shape. Might not be the first one, just my favorite shape becomes my shape for all of them. And I do cutting, fading, warping, whatever the fastest way is. There's no fast way in VO effects, to make sure that the shape, the general timing is always the same. Because I'm always doing it to the same sword swing. I'm always doing it to the same jump animation. So the timings need to be right, but need to sound variant. This can be very tricky and very hard, which is why even when they do 15 VO effects, I might only ship 3 because the rest were just not right. Other things that people don't think about, especially when jumping or attacking, you need to make sure the syllables are the same sometimes. If they do a huh versus a ha, sometimes you don't want that variance. It messes up the timing. Sometimes it's fine. But sometimes you need, so those are, when we start getting into the nitty gritty of talking about VO effects, we're talking about syllables, we're talking about attack times, we're talking about how similar do these need to be? How nitty gritty technical are we getting with these to make your lives easier? It's going to be slower, it's going to be more expensive, but we can do it. I then have scripts where you just cut, select the ones you want, move away the ones you don't. You hit a button, it then makes regions for each individual file, names them, appends whatever you want for VO effects. If you look up in our settings, we have settings for it. So mainly it's, do we want like letters at the end? So attack 01, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Attack 02, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Attack 02 will be what it says in the spreadsheet. That's what the big region will say. We'll cut it up. And the script will add smaller regions with the A, B, C, D, E, F, G and add them to the region render matrix. Anyone here not know what I mean by region render matrix? Cool. There is a way, so all of these bars up here are regions. When I go to, if I remember the right hotkey, my renderer, I can open up a render matrix where I see in rows each track and in columns each region. I'm going to step out for a second so everyone can see that. Now, for people who know the region render matrix, there's probably something unfamiliar about this, which is the lack of solid boxes. Because typically when you do something in the region render matrix, it looks like that. If you right click, you can force mono, stereo, or a specific multi-channel number. So I can force this to 4 tracks. And it'll make sure whatever file comes out of here, no matter what the source is, no matter what the render settings are, it will be 4 tracks or mono. So this is just an extra safety check, again, set by script, to make sure that the files coming out are mono no matter what. Yeah.
Do you never like render stereo effects or anything like that onto this type of thing?
Not for VO. VO is always mono. Yeah.
Even if it's the player character?
It's being recorded mono. It's being recorded mono, so I'm just going to put out mono. If they want to make it stereo in the middleware, that's not there's no sweat off my back. They can do whatever they want then. If they've recorded it stereo, I'm happy to do a stereo, but I haven't seen that yet. So grab the stereo shotgun. So yeah, these are my basic settings. Usually it's not this simple of a directory. Usually I will do $track/region, not all capitals. That does actually matter. But I'll have a universal render destination that's set for the project that's in some Dropbox or something somewhere. And then if you do $track/region, it will make a folder with the track name. So I'll make sure that the track is named to the character, and then the region will be the file name. So it'll just create those directories for me or for the editors, and the files will end up in the right place. Any final questions? Yeah.
Talking about the at scale part of it.
Yeah.
You were doing
yes.
The gain shaping. Do you have, is that something that is humans only, or do you have scripts for that, or how do you do 40,000 fade-ins and outs like that when you're listening to it?
So the tops and tail fade in, fade out is by a script. Usually it needs to be adjusted by the human, especially the tail, because actors love to finish talking and they go, they love to do that. And so Paul knows what I'm talking about. And so it's always an art to get that to feel like a natural fade out, like you're not cutting something off, but not hearing that breath. A great voice actor will know to pause for just a fraction of a beat and then breathe out. That's enough. But the physical clip gaining is all that we really need the engineers to do. That's all that they need to think about, is just where do I need to actually clip gain? And how detailed that is, what that means, is all project to project, and why we'll have training sessions and iterations and stuff. Like the beginning of the process is slow to get all that stuff right, and then we're good from there. Yeah. To that point, though, there are a lot of details. There are a lot of going back to the same character, a lot of stuff like that. So that was a big question for us, was communication and data archiving and searchability. So we actually used Discord for it. We used a forum channel for all of our engineers, and we had a group of 3 people who we called Mission Control. So there was an @ tag for Mission Control, so whoever was available at the time could help somebody who was having a problem. They didn't have to tag 3 people or hope that the person they were tagging was online. We then also had a forum channel where each session name was its own forum post, and any session-specific questions or issues or changes the editor had to make it work went into there. And then when the delivery happened or we had a meeting with the client, we could just run through those and see everything. You can have tags in forum channels where we kept track of the status of projects, as well as an Excel spreadsheet to see statuses and assignments and all of that. But the spreadsheet was just for Mission Control. All the editor saw was a Discord forum channel, and we're just tagged in sessions when they were ready and tagged Mission Control back when they were done, and just moved on. And so if they had an issue, they could just search Discord, and if someone else had a similar issue, the search result would pop up, and they could see the conversation between a member of Mission Control and the editor to see how they resolved it, so that fewer pings were making it to Mission Control, more information was archived, less stuff was siloed, and communication was a bit more open. So that was a really successful method that we used. That was a bit of a surprise, but was really great at this scale over a 12-month project, over 6, 7, 8 different engineer editors over the time. So people could swap in and swap out as size, scale, other stuff were all taken into consideration. Yeah.
Just on deliveries with that setup, did someone from your mission control team effectively need to okay every single?
That's a great question. It depends client to client. A client we're working with right now said that they're going to QC everything on their end. Other projects, they're like, we're taking your files and they're going straight into build. I'm terrified by that personally. Yeah. So we will have someone at least spot check before. Usually there needs to be like a zipping and an uploading, and so a bit of a process. So they'll spot check during that. But again, that's time. And so we try to just make it as efficient as possible. It also depends on how quickly we can trust someone. Like certain people take to this faster than others. Certain people we then need to check longer than others. There are some people, there's like a group of like 4 or 5 engineers at this point where I know if I give them a session, it will come out as if I did it. So I can trust them 100%. There are other people who I know haven't done it as much. I'll check a bit more of theirs. And as the project goes on, that change, that evolves. But at the beginning, it's much slower. It's a lot more checking. It's a lot more trying to bounce stuff back ourselves so it doesn't bounce back from the client. Yeah.
I know we were talking about before not doing like too much batch stuff. What happens when you have 2 characters in dialogue with each other? You can listen to one character and use your ears and get it all leveled for one character, but if one character has a very different voice type than the other, like a low voice is going to have a completely different LUFS situation than a high voice. So how do you, or is that part of your work?
It's a great question, and again, I think it's client to client. If they say by default, we're not gonna know that they're in conversation with each other.
Right. You're not at that stage like part of the dramatic.
We don't have that context. Yeah. So we're relying on the client to do that in middleware. If they tell us that, we'll probably set the match files to a folder that has both characters in it, so we're hearing them side by side, and that's something that we're starting from the beginning. But most of the time, we have no idea. Yeah.
Getting it in a place for them to be able to make strong decisions.
The character is consistent with itself. So it's their job to make sure that the characters are in sync with each other. We're checking that. If they give us the match files from various characters, then we'll just put a pool of all the characters and make sure everyone's in the same world. But that's why you've got techniques in middleware to really make sure that that's good to go. Yeah. Anything else? Sweet. Thanks y'all for coming. If you have any questions. If you have questions, I'm on the Discord. Feel free to reach out. Never hesitate. And I'll be here for a bit as well. Thanks y'all so much for coming.